Ready to go?
Let's do it.
Okay. Good evening. I'm going to call to order a special meeting of the Board of Aldermen, this being Monday, April 24th, 2023 at 7 p.m. in the Automatic Chamber. The Vice President, Michael O'Brien Sr., which is myself, will preside due to the absence of our President. I will now turn the meeting over to the City Clerk, who will offer the prayer.
Almighty God, we have the high honor and the serious duty to manage the affairs of our beloved city. Fill us, O God, with a spirit of unity and understanding which enables us to face our multiple problems with a serene mind, with justice and charity for all, so that any and all decisions made by us will always be for the betterment and greater happiness of all our fellow citizens. So help us God. Amen.
And will Alderman Theobald please lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman O'Brien.
Present.
Alderman Sullivan. Alderman Clee. Alderman Moran. Alderman Lopez.
Here.
Alderman Jettie.
Here.
Alderman Clemens.
Here.
Alderwoman Kelly.
I'm here.
Alderman Como.
Present.
Alderman Dowd.
Present.
Alderman Govea.
Here.
Alderman Karen.
Here.
Alderman Tebow.
Here.
Alderwoman Timmons. Alderman Wilshire. 10 present, 5 absent.
I declare a quorum, and I would like to thank all the aldermen that made special attention to make it this evening. I know it is school vacation week, but I'm sure the citizens and myself appreciate your diligence in coming to tonight's meeting. Also, if I may have a moment briefly of personal privilege, I'd like to thank everybody for the well wishes when I was a little bit ill there. I'm up and doing fine, strong like bull, so we're good to go. So thank you. Okay, seeing that, as per our custom, I will now turn the meeting over to the chairman of the Budget Committee, Alderman Richard Dowd.
Okay, this evening we have public hearing on 6 different resolutions, and we'll try and move through those as quickly as possible, and we'll be addressing these in budget right afterwards. The first is R-23-103, authorizing the mayor and the city treasurer to issue bonds not to exceed $1,700,000 to purchase 1 new ladder truck for the fire department. Is there anyone here that would like to come up and give us an oversight?
Good evening, Steve Buxton, Chief National Fire Rescue. This funding mechanism is to replace our aerial ladder truck that is stationed at 15 Amherst Street. The truck is currently due for replacement in the SURF schedule in FY27. However, build times for apparatus at this point in time exceed 32 months, so we're trying to stay ahead of it. There's some further details in regards to motors that we can probably get into at the next meeting, but I won't get too deep in the weeds at this point in time.
All right. Any questions for the chief while he's here?
Alderman Dowd, if I may, you can't see me back here, but a question through the chair to the chief. We have done this in the past, haven't we? When we have a special situation to order, because it takes quite a long time, as you mentioned, to build these things, to put this spot on the floor.
That is correct. We replace our engines at a 12-year cycle, and then we put them in reserve status. They're not on the front line. And aerial apparatus are replaced at a 15-year mark, and then put in reserve status. So we get pretty much 20 to 25 years out of each piece of apparatus that we have in purchase. Due to the excessive build times that are currently underway, is the reason we have to get out in front of this.
Thank you, Alderman.
Any other questions? Thank you, Chief. Sure, he'll be back up in a minute. All right. I will now hear testimony in favor of R 23-103. Seeing none, I'll ask for testimony in opposition. Seeing none, once again, testimony in favor. Seeing none, and once again, testimony in opposition. Seeing none. I will close the public hearing on R 23-103 and move into R 23-104. Authorizing the mayor and city treasurer to issue bonds not to exceed $900,000 to purchase one new pumper truck for the fire department. Chief?
Good evening, Steve Buxton, National Fire Chief. The funding in this mechanism is to replace a pumper truck. This truck is again stationed at 15 Amherst Street. It's due for replacement in FY '26. And current build times for pumper trucks are 28 plus months. So again, we're looking to get this funded so we can hold our schedule.
Thank you. Any other questions for Chief? No? Okay. Now open the public hearing. Testimony in favor of R 23-104. Seeing none, I will now open up testimony in opposition to R 23-104. Seeing none, once again, testimony in favor of R 23-104. Seeing none, and once again, testimony in opposition of R 23-104. Seeing none, I will now close the public hearing on R 23-104 and move into R 23-111. Relative to the supplemental appropriation of $365,083.34 of FY 2023 unanticipated revenue into fund number 7024 opioid abatement expendable trust fund. Is there anyone here to speak to that? Or any aldermen that have any questions about it? No? Alderman Jettie?
I really don't have any questions, but I want to express my disappointment that there's no one from the city to explain this. I think it's happened in the past where the city has, someone from the staff has not come in to explain a request. And so I just want to express my disappointment and hope that in the future that the mayor makes sure that there's somebody here to explain the request.
Understood.
Thank you.
And we may have the same problems we have with some of the aldermen all being on vacation now that we're getting into the early vacation period for the summer. Yes.
I just want to add
Alderman
that
Lopez?
my agreement with both my two colleagues who just spoke, that this is a difficult week, I'm sure, for many parents, but this is a major issue. And I think as aldermen, we need to be informed as to the scope of the continuing issues with opioid and other forms of addiction in the city. We are seeing our city services get stretched and taxed by this. So this is an opportunity, for whatever it's worth, to educate legislators and policymakers as to the need for this funding. It's not necessarily questioning the need, but I think it could have been an opportunity to talk about the scope of the problems the city is facing and the different activities that are essential to combating it.
I'll see if I can find out if anybody was informed to be here. All right, no other questions. I'll open up the public hearing on R 23-111. Testimony in favor? Seeing none. Testimony in opposition? Seeing none. Testimony in favor? Seeing none. And testimony in opposition? Seeing none. I'll now close the public hearing on R 23-111. And open the public hearing on R 23-112, relative to the supplemental appropriation of $18,009 of FY 2023 unanticipated revenue fund into account number 7026, Capital Equipment Reserve Fund. Is anyone here to talk to the capital reserve?
Good evening. Cheryl Linder, Treasury Management Officer. I wasn't here originally to speak to it, but I can just explain. So this amount is going back into the SURF account. It was generated by an insurance reimbursement for an environmental health department vehicle that was lost. So for a loss, sorry, not lost the vehicle, but that's where this funding is coming from. So we're going to need to replace that vehicle out of the SURF fund, so the insurance reimbursement will go towards that. It'll go back into the fund.
Any questions on that? So that's money that's going into SURF from outside from insurance because of a vehicle that was, I'm assuming, in some type of accident. Okay, thank you. No further questions? All right. On R23-112, testimony in favor? Seeing none. Testimony in opposition? Seeing none. Testimony in favor? Seeing none. And once again, testimony in opposition? Seeing none. I'll close the public hearing on R23-112 and open the public hearing on R23-113 relative to the supplemental appropriation of $35,360.50 of FY 2023 unanticipated revenue into Fund Number 7026, Capital Equipment Reserve Fund. Ms. Linder?
Thank you. Cheryl Linder, Treasury Management Officer. Again, this is another vehicle. It was a loss of a 2021 Chevy Bolt in the Transit Department, and the insurance reimbursement is just going back into the SURF fund, which we'll use to turn around and buy another vehicle.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Linder? Nope. All right. Seeing none, I will now open up R23-113, testimony in favor. Seeing none. Testimony in opposition? Seeing none. Testimony in favor? Seeing none. Testimony in opposition? Again, none. I'll now close the public hearing on R23-113 and open the last public hearing this evening, R23-115, authorizing the mayor to enter into a federal project agreement with the state of New Hampshire for the purpose of constructing an accessible ramp to the Cotton Mill Transfer Bridge and to accept the appropriate $300,000 for the project. Please come up and give us an overview.
Amy DeRoche, Economic Development Project Manager. These funds are from an unanticipated federal grant. They are congressionally designated to only be spent on the ADA ramp over at the Cotton Mill Transfer Bridge. If they're accepted, then they'll go into the TIF fund and they'll be used to help offset construction costs when we construct the ramp this summer.
Okay. Any questions? Thank you. Seeing no further questions, I will now open up R23-115, testimony in favor. Seeing none. Testimony in opposition. Seeing none. Testimony in favor? Seeing none. And once again, testimony in opposition? Seeing none. Now close the public hearing on R23-115. And do I hear a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that the April 24th, 2023 special meeting of the Board of Aldermen be adjourned.
Okay, motion is to adjourn. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. We're adjourned at 7:14 p.m. Give a couple minutes and we'll go right into budget. 7:16, and we're in the Aldermanic Chamber. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman Sullivan is absent. Alderwoman at large Shoshana Kelly.
I'm here.
Alderman Ernest Jettie.
Here.
Alderman June Karen.
Here.
Alderman at large Michael B. O'Brien Sr. is present. And our clerk, excuse me, not a clerk, our chairman, Alderman Richard A. Dowd.
Present. All right, we have a quorum. First item on the agenda is public comment. Oh, excuse me. Yes.
Also here.
Oh. Tebow?
Oh, yes. Also here, Alderman Tebow. And
Alderman Clemens.
Alderman Clemens. And please excuse me for not recognizing you.
Okay. First item on the agenda is public comment. Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak? Seeing no one. Communications.
Communications from Kevin Burgess, Chairman of the Board of Fire Commissioners. Reason, fire apparatus replacement of Resolution R-23-103. Further communication from Kevin Burgess, Chairman of the Board of Fire Commissioners. Reason, fire apparatus replacement, Resolution R-23-104. Further communication from Chris Lynch, Airport Manager, request to be excluded from the fiscal year 2024 Budget Committee meeting. Further communication from Len Fournier, Superintendent, Woodlawn Pinewood Cemeteries, requesting to be excluded from the fiscal year 23 budget hearing meeting. Further communication from Kenneth J. Lennox, Superintendent of the Edgewood Cemetery. Reason, fiscal year 2023 highlights and objectives for fiscal year 2024.
Thank you. The last three were, there's no funds that they're requesting from the city budget, so there was no sense bringing them in here for a meeting. And they have explained a little bit about their particular budgets. And the cemetery's budgets come from their trust funds, and the airport has their own funds. Okay, unfinished business?
There is none.
New business resolutions.
Before us this evening is R-23-103, authorizing the mayor and city treasurer to issue bonds not to exceed $1,700,000 to purchase one new ladder truck for the fire department. Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion to recommend final passage.
Motion is to recommend final passage of R-23-103. Chief, you want to come up and answer any potential questions? You can just stay for the next one, too. Okay, so are there any questions for the chief relative to the motion on the floor to recommend final passage to the full board? Yes, Alderman Clemens.
Not true, well, I guess it is a question, but if the chief could explain too, you mentioned in the public hearing that there was a motor issue too. I'm just curious, pure curiosity what you were speaking of.
Certainly, Steve Buxton, Chief Nashua Fire. So as you can imagine, it's a little bit complex to try to come and ask for funding, projecting that our trucks build spots are scheduled for 28 plus months out, 32 plus months out. Adding to that, the EPA is going to be releasing a new emissions restriction guideline in 2027. Excuse me. The motor that we utilize in all of our apparatus is manufactured by Cummins. Cummins has done their research and development on the advances they're going to make in technology to meet those emission standards in 2027. They decided to release that motor in 2026. So as we sit here today, we cannot put hands on this motor. There is very little data, if any, in regards to this new generation motor. But what we do know from past experience is that first-generation motors sometimes have bugs or problems with them. We have gone down that road in the past. We end up spending some money. More importantly, the apparatus usually ends up spending a significant amount of time out of service. So we have a $750,000 or $1.7 million piece of apparatus that we can't use, and we end up having to work with the manufacturer through some bugs. We're not opposed to the technology. We just would probably like to embrace it on the second generation or the second round. So by placing our order at this point in time, we would get what I refer to as a legacy motor. It's one that currently is on the road, that we've been utilizing for several years, and is probably not prone to any of the bugs that we think potentially could be an issue for us.
Chief, along those same lines, wouldn't you also have to train your mechanics to be able to maintain a new engine? Since it's not like the ones we currently have?
Steve Buxton, National Fire. So yeah, there would be some training and software upgrades that would go along with the new generation motor. This isn't just simply a motor upgrade. This is, they've made some significant advances in technology with their big block engines that they're hoping will make them a competitor with the electric vehicle market. So besides all of everything I just said and the problems that could potentially come with the first generation of it, the motor alone on these pieces of apparatus will see a price increase of a minimum of $100,000.
Okay.
Yes, follow up?
Yeah, just a quick follow-up. So, we're doing this ahead of time, and I agree 100% with everything you've said. I'm behind this. But just for curiosity's sake, what would be the normal time frame if we weren't under the gun to get this in and production wasn't backed up? Like in the years past, what is a normal time frame for us to reorder a truck or order a new truck?
Steve Buxton,
Yes,
National
yes.
Fire. So go back 2 years when we were in the pandemic still and just coming out of it. Build times on apparatus for an engine was about 8 to 10 months, and aerial apparatus was 12 to 14 months.
Okay.
Over the last year and a half, build times have exploded to what I currently laid out for you at 28 plus months and then 32 plus months.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for the chief? Alderman Jettie?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Chief, you and I talked about this last week. And, I don't pretend to know much about fire trucks, certainly not as much as you do. And, I don't want to, I wouldn't dare to second guess you about anything that you just said. I was disappointed when I talked to you, only because, not because of, not challenging or questioning your expertise at all, but I was disappointed because the city has several years ago declared its intention to get away from burning fossil fuels as much as possible. And that was confirmed and reiterated in the recent master plan that we just adopted, the Imagine Nashua. And then we, the Board of Aldermen just recently, within a few months, passed a resolution that among other things, asked that any vehicle purchases be reviewed by the sustainability department to see whether or not, an electric vehicle would be a practical choice. And so when you first told me that one of the reasons for pushing this ahead, these vehicles are not, I don't question the need for the vehicles. They're on the SURF schedule, but not until 26 or 27. And, you know, you've explained that we're pushing this ahead because of the lead time required. But another reason that you gave me, and you alluded to it tonight, is that that the EPA is going to require more stringent emission controls on these engines in the future. You know, not for the purpose of giving anybody a hard time, but, you know, to help us get control of this, you know, of this climate crisis that we're all hearing about and we're all trying to avoid. And so, you know, when I first heard you say, you know, if we do this ahead of time, we can, you know, get an engine that will be grandfathered and not have to comply with these new regulations. So, you know, you've explained, and I've, you know, I did talk to some, a fire commissioner, you know, who, you know, I looked at the minutes of the meeting when you reviewed this. The minutes are very sketchy, so it didn't really tell me much. And I wondered whether the commission had really looked at it and considered this, but I talked to one of the commissioners and was reassured that yes, the commission did consider what I'm bringing up now. And so I was reassured by that. You know, so I understand, you know, why you want to, you know, go ahead with this now and try to get this legacy, so-called legacy engine that's going to be grandfathered. But I hope, and I think, you know, you tried to reassure me, and I think you did. In the future, you know, anything like when, you know, you've got a lot of vehicles that, you know, I mean, you've got a vehicle, the deputy's got a vehicle, you know, the fire inspector, and I mean, there are other vehicles, you know, that whenever those come up for renewal, that you will be looking at EVs as a possible solution. And that in the future, you know, more major equipment that you will seriously look at. I mean, after we talked, I went to the Cummins website, and you know, they talk about this new engine as the best thing since sliced bread, and I know it's the manufacturer talking, but you know, they're raving about this new engine. And I went to the Pierce website, and I see that they're offering electric fire trucks now. And, you know, in these new electric trucks, they have, you know, not only the battery for the electric part of it, but they also have, you know, the old not the old, but a new, you know, gasoline or diesel-powered engine, just to make sure that you don't run out of electricity while you're, you know, at a fire. You've got this engine that will supplement that, so that, you know, you're assured that you're going to be able to get to the fire and pump the water that's needed and get back home when necessary. So this seems like a great thing, and they talk about one of the advantages of the EV pumper is it's quiet. So on the scene, the communication among your officers is much easier, much better. So it sounds like it's a good thing. I understand your reluctance to jump into something brand new without it's being proven. I respect that, I understand that. But I hope as we move forward that you and the Fire Commission will be on board with this new technology, and, you know, to help us get away from fossil fuels that are doing so much damage to the climate. And so, in the form of a question, can you say that yes, you will do that?
Steve Buxton, Nashville Fire. So yes, first off, after these two apparatus, the next apparatus we'll be ordering will have that new generation motor in it. In regards to EV fire apparatus, that is on the horizon coming at us. I've already had conversation with Doria Brown in regards to it. She has a tool that she utilizes to cost analyze not only the price of the equipment you're buying, but also the infrastructure that you would have to install within your facility to support it. And we're gonna start doing some work in that area. As you know, in our master plan within the fire department, it spoke to a significant investment in the fire department infrastructure, i.e. our facilities in the future. And I would say that one of the best things we could do is set ourselves up for the future, potentially EV fire apparatus. When we're remodeling or rehabbing or building new fire stations, we actually would equip those with the infrastructure needed if we ever have the opportunity to go down that road. I will tell you that EV fire apparatus are still fairly new. They're not like electric cars that have been on the road for 5 or 10 years. The first one just hit the market about 2 years ago. They're mostly out west. Cambridge was actually looking at them at one point in time and decided not to go with them. But they're actually doing exactly what I just said. And as they rehab their fire stations, they're investing in the infrastructure to support it for the future. So, yes, we will be utilizing that technology at some point in time in the future.
All set, Alderman Jettie?
Yes, thank you very much.
Any other questions? Yes, Alderman Kelly.
I'll keep it brief. I just wanted to echo some of the questions. Most of them got asked, but I had similar questions around what we were going to do in the future, given the new technology, and just wanted to make the comment that I heard a lot of things from you that's what we're hoping to hear in terms of starting to build up the infrastructure and starting to get ready for it. Our intent wasn't to suddenly make every department have to be on the bleeding edge of technology, and understand that reliability can be a little bit scary, especially when we're talking about fire trucks. So I just wanted to echo that this discussion came up in the Energy Environment Committee, and in general city committees and city departments, and how they're going to start rolling into our goals, but also the new regulations. So I think this makes sense. I'm looking forward to us to continuing pushing forward, and to my colleagues' point, wherever we can make jumps, if it's easier to swap out a truck that you drive around, I'd love to see that as well.
Okay. Alderman O'Brien?
Yeah, I would just like to say, Chief, I got to commend you and the Board of Fire Commissioners. I hear echoes of my father and the advice, and being a shade tree mechanic myself. Never buy a car that's initially coming off its native. Let them work the bugs out. I think you're saving the city an awful lot of money by doing this. So good thought process.
Thank you.
So just one thing, it's not directly applicable, but the United States government just built the latest aircraft carrier, the USS Gerald Ford, and they put a whole bunch of new technology on it. And it was 4 years late and billions of dollars overrun because the technology, when it went to sea, didn't work. They have now put in legislation, all the companies that build stuff for the government, that says you will not do that anymore, basically, without going into the details. Are there any other questions? Yes, Alderman. Excuse me, Chief.
No, thank you.
Take a pay cut.
Steve Buxton, Nashua Fire. I just wanted to bring to your attention that this is a very time-sensitive matter for us in the fire department. Because of the build times, there are only so many build spots left in the schedule. As of late last week, there was 14 engine spots available and 26 aerial build spots available. So I would request the committee to move forward with a verbal report at the full board tomorrow, so that we can move the funding mechanism forward, and the mayor can take the appropriate steps to get us a
Should be on the agenda.
Thank you.
I equally concur, yes.
Okay, any other questions? Seeing none, thank you, Chief. All right, So the motion on the floor is to recommend final passage of R 23-103, authorizing the mayor and the city treasurer to issue bonds not to exceed $1,700,000 to purchase one new ladder truck for the fire department. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right.
All right, also before us this evening is R-23-104, authorizing the mayor and city treasurer to issue bonds not to exceed $900,000 to purchase a new pumper truck for the fire department. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make the motion to recommend final passage.
Okay, the motion on the floor is to recommend final passage of R 23-104, and I assume most of the arguments follow for this truck as it was for the previous one. Are there any additional questions, though? Yes, Alderwoman Kelly.
Thank you. Pardon my not knowing as much about your fleet. How many pumper trucks do we have?
Steve Buxton, National Fire. So we have 6 frontline engines, and we have 3 reserve engines. And the reserve engines are actually utilized on the front line a very significant amount of time for us to do our preventive maintenance, for when there's electronic issues or warranty work that needs to be done. At the end of the day, a used piece of fire apparatus after 15 or 20 years does not have a lot of value. So it's actually, we realize a benefit from holding on to it, so that we can actually put people in a truck. Alderman O'Brien up there can probably speak to a few days where he showed up to work and he was put in a station wagon or a van to respond to fires because they were out of fire trucks. Thankfully, we haven't been in that position for many years because we run the reserve fleet that we do.
If I could follow up.
Follow up?
Thank you. I appreciate that. Obviously, do not have a whole grasp of the largeness of our fleet. The reason I asked is because I felt like we had just replaced a pumper. So are they, like, I feel like maybe last summer we did. So are they, do we tend to try to get them more spread out than a couple of years apart?
So I think an important thing to remember here is the trucks we're ordering or we're funding to order tonight will not be here for 28 to 32 months. So you are correct. We just received 2 trucks last summer. But these ones will not, under normal build conditions, we wouldn't be in front of you for another 1.5 to 2 years.
Okay.
So there would be a couple of years in between them. But because of the build times, we have to order now to get them here in time for 26, 27.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions? Yes, Alderman Jettie?
If we still were using station wagons, those could be EVs, right?
Potentially.
It should be.
Good one, Alderman.
Yeah.
If they made an EV station wagon, sure.
Yeah.
Could we get that with wood paneling as well?
All right. Motion on the floor is to recommend final passage of R 23-104. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Also before us this evening is R-23-111, relative to the supplemental appropriation of $365,083.34 of fiscal year 2023 unanticipated revenue into fund number 7024, Opiate Abatement Expendable Trust Fund. Mr. Chairman, I would like to make the motion to recommend final passage.
Motion on the floor is to recommend final passage of R 23-111. Are there any questions? Yes, Alderman Tebow.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This won't show up tomorrow in the meeting, right? It'll show up in 2 weeks? Or will it show up tomorrow?
I think the only ones that we're having a special review on are the fire trucks.
Okay, good. I was just curious because, the question had been brought up about having somebody there, maybe in 2 weeks, somebody can speak to this a little bit more, just because I was curious about it and wanted to make sure that it was going to something that was helping.
Either that or a note through Donna to everyone that explains it.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? Yes, Alderman O'Brien?
Thank you, just a statement, and too bad the chief had to run so quick. But the opioid abatement is still a front and center issue, and anything to help out the cause with that. It's still prevalent, unfortunately, within a certain segment of our community. So this is a good way to try to help those that are affected.
Okay, any additional, Alderman Clements?
Thank you. Yeah, I was reading the Union Leader, and I don't know whether it was Sunday or today's paper, but
Sunday.
opioids overdoses in Nashua are up 80% over last year. So this is unanticipated revenue. I don't know where it's coming from. It's coming from the state, but I don't know whether it's a grant or whether or not it's from like a settlement or something. Regardless, we have an issue. It's not coming from city tax money, so I think this is a good use of these funds, because obviously we are not over that problem yet, unfortunately.
Okay. Any other questions? Alderman Jettie?
Yeah, I'm reading the analysis provided to us by, I think, the legal department, which says that this is $365,000 of unanticipated revenue, which represents the city's proportional share of funds received from the state for all opioid-related settlement funds or judgments. So I wasn't on the board then, but at some time in the past, the board retained a law firm to represent the city in the lawsuits that were against the opioid manufacturers. And so this evidently is part of that money from the settlement of those cases. And it's going to be used for, it's going to be put into the opioid expendable trust, opioid abatement expendable trust fund. So it sounds like it's going to be used, in the fight against this crisis. So I'm not against it. I don't want to do anything to hold this up. My comment earlier was, it would just be nice to have somebody who knows, as opposed to, my reading a paragraph and interpreting it. It would be nice to have somebody who knows, who could tell us exactly, where this is coming from and where it's going. And as Alderman Lopez pointed out, an opportunity to educate us and the public about this crisis, which is really a crisis that we're, as Alderman Clemens pointed out, it's not getting any better. It's getting worse. So,
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm assuming, I remember the state was part of a bunch of states that sued, and that money goes to the federal government, and then it takes forever to go to the state and even longer to come to the cities and towns. So it may have been done a long time ago, and hopefully we can get a detailed explanation. Okay, no other questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Also before us this evening is R-23112, relative to the supplemental appropriation of $18,009 of fiscal year 2023 unanticipated revenue into Fund Number 7026, Capital Equipment Reserve Fund. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to recommend final passage.
The motion on the floor is to recommend final passage to the full board of R-23112. Are there any questions? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, also before us this evening is R-23113, relative to the supplemental appropriation of $35,360.50 of fiscal year 2023 unanticipated revenue into Fund Number 7026, Capital Equipment Reserve Fund. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to recommend final passage.
Motion is to recommend final passage of R-23113. Does anyone have any questions? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Also before us this evening is R-23-114, relative to the transfer of $5,000 from Department 194 contingency, account 70100, general contingency, to Department 144, Edgewood and Suburban Cemeteries, accounting classification 51, salary and wages. Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion to recommend final passage.
Motion is to recommend final passage of R-23-114. I'll just give an overview real quick. Because of the number of Saturday burials this year, they're overrunning their overtime account. And what we're doing is we're forwarding the money so they can pay their overtime, but they're going to give the money back to us out of their trust fund. So it'll be a zero wash for the city. But they have to do that now because they're running low for overtime out of their current city budget. So if anybody has any more questions, you can ask Ms. Linder to come up, but it's my cemetery and I've talked to the trustees and I know that's what's going on. Alderman Jettie?
Yeah, could I just ask, so these Saturday burials, I mean, I think Saturday is a popular day for funerals, and you know, it's a sad occasion, and you know, people want to do this when as many members of the family are available. You know, so I understand why there would be a lot of Saturday burials. Does the cemetery charge people extra in order to pay for the overtime, or is that just worked into their budget?
I think, I'm not entirely sure exactly how they manage it, but Saturday burials are overtime for their staff, and they account for some in their budget, but they had so many Saturday burials. That whole new section they just opened up, which was over 2 acres, is filling up fast, and they're running out of grave sites. And they're gonna make some, I forget the term, for ashes, exterior, that are like little monuments like they have up in Manchester, but they haven't done those yet. But they're running out of grave sites, and and there's been a substantial number of deaths over the last year, and a lot of them are on Saturdays, and that's overtime. And they're running short, and we can't allow them to run short of funds to pay their employees. They also, they had asked for in the last budget season, and we had granted them some additional employees, so yes, Saturday burials are very popular, and if it's done on a Saturday, that's overtime, because those people are there 5 days a week anyway.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Also before us this evening is R-23-114, relative to the transfer of $5,000 from Department 194 contingency account 70100, general contingency. I already read that, so please excuse me, and to who is ever going to transcribe that. We're skipping down to also before us this evening is R-23-115, authorizing the mayor to enter into a federal and project agreement with the state of New Hampshire for the purpose of construction and an accessible ramp to the Cotton Mill Transfer Bridge, and to accept and appropriate $300,000 for the project. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to recommend final passage.
So the motion is to recommend final passage of R-23-115. We have someone here. If there are any additional questions, does anybody have any questions? Alderman Jettie?
Thank you. Yeah, just, so basically what this,
Would you like
if
to
I could
make a-
ask Ms. Linder if she could, oh, I'm sorry, yes. So what this resolution is doing is accepting $300,000 state grant or a federal grant, but the total cost of the project is much more, right? It's, if I read, it's 1,140,000. Can you explain where the rest of the money's coming from?
Yes, good.
Amy DeRoche, Economic Development. The rest of the money is, for the construction, is coming from the Riverfront TIF bond that was previously approved for construction of the whole project.
But all this resolution is doing is accepting the $300,000 from the federal grant.
Correct.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, new business ordinances,
There's none.
table in committee, there is none. General discussion? Seeing none. Public comment? There's no one here, so none. Remarks by Alderman? Seeing none. Do we have a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, motion is to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We're adjourned at 7:52 PM.